A4M is the largest congress in anti-aging medicine. They teach first and second generation HRT systems, but it is the standard that doctors go to who want to get into the field. And so it really is the place to go to for a physician who wants to, or a healthcare practitioner who wants to learn not just anti-aging medicine, but it's more of an alternative medicine institution. And they have different modules on various types of alternative medicines, from endocannabinoid medicine to HRT to longevity medicine, metabolic medicine. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the MeNoPause Moxie Podcast, where we strategically challenge the status quo on perimenopause, menopause, and female hormone balancing. I'm clinical hormone coach Marie Hoäg, here with my producer and co-host Maggie Kuhn. Welcome to the show. So what happens when you walk into the world's largest anti-aging conference after attending for 2 decades and being an expert in advanced female hormone medicine? Well, you don't just hear what's being said, you hear what's still being avoided. In this episode, Maggie and I are taking you inside the A4M conference in Las Vegas to share what's changing, what's performative, and what still falls dangerously short when it comes to women, estrogen, and true female hormone balancing. Hey, Maggie.
Hey, Marie. I am really excited to hear about the conference and all that you experienced. I'm kind of envious that you got to attend and hear all this great content. So for those listeners who may not know what A4M is, can you describe what that stands for and what it's all about?
The A4M is the largest congress in anti-aging medicine. They are one of the institutions that trains physicians how to prescribe hormone replacement therapy. They teach first and second generation HRT systems, but it is the standard that doctors go to who want to get into the field. And even beyond doctors, any sort of healthcare practitioner, functional medicine. So it has a functional medicine basis to it. And so it really is the place to go to for a physician who wants to, or a healthcare practitioner who wants to learn not just anti-aging medicine, but it's more of an alternative medicine institution. And they have different modules on various types of alternative medicines, from endocannabinoid medicine to HRT to longevity medicine, metabolic medicine, mitochondrial medicine. So all these different types of alternative medicine specialties that doctors can get education on outside of conventional medicine. So it's a very big conference, especially the one in Vegas, where people come in from all over the world. So there's thousands of people that go, and it's a lot of fun because most people there are healthy, actually. So then of course you walk into the casino and you have a different story, but it's interesting being in a group of people who are generally healthy and who want to be healthy. And so that's the conversation. So it's always nice to be around that mindset.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that the 4 A's and A4M is the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine?
Yep.
Okay. So, and isn't it interesting that female hormone balancing falls under the category of anti-aging and longevity?
Yeah, it is interesting because what's spoken about a lot is menopause and now perimenopause. But years ago, they didn't speak about perimenopause so much. When we were first attending it in the early 2000s, they weren't talking so much about perimenopause. So there has been an evolution of medicine even within A4M. But and a few years ago, I remember when they were presenting, I got really disgruntled too, and I walked out of the auditorium when they were introducing AI. This must have been about 5 years ago or so, when they had an AI robot on stage giving the lecture and talking about how wonderful AI is going to be for medicine. And I'm thinking, okay, everybody in this auditorium is going to lose their job to this robot. So everybody was acting like this. It's this big deal. It's like, I think there's pros and cons to AI, but also what I liked about this conference, one of the things, there are many things, but they're incorporating AI medicine. And that's what I find interesting. And I think that is the future, because this whole field of anti-aging medicine has been nothing but this just evolutionary event, just that has unfolded according to the needs of, well, the public.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's kind of the place to go for what's ahead in medicine.
Oh yeah, that's the place. That's the place to go. In fact, I don't know of any other, institution that offers this type of education. So it is a great place to start, for even for people who are just dabbling to see what's available.
Yeah. So, what would you say, just overall, was kind of the energy or vibe of this year's conference?
What's interesting is I was commenting on one of my business partners that I was with here at the conference, that it's a strange energy this year, in that the gurus and the people who actually started A4M, the people who came lectures like, Pamela Smith, Stephen Sinatra, Ron Rothenberg, Neil Rosier. I mean, some of these big name people aren't there now. And the energy of the conference is different, just a different vibe. It's almost like there doesn't appear to be strong. I don't want to speak badly about it, but there just is different. It's different leadership. It appears to be a lack of leadership, or they're in a transitional state of affairs, because I know a lot of these people that we learned from in the early 2000s are either retiring or dying. And so there's, new blood that's going in. And so that's it. It really, A4M isn't all that it actually could be. And I really hope this new generation of leadership that goes in there keeps an open mind with AI in medicine, but also advancements in medicine. Because again, every year I go, I'm continue to have the same conversations with my colleagues, is that they're still teaching first and second generation HRT protocols. And so it's about low dose menopause management approaches. And so that's always a big disappointment. But it's good for us, but for our company, but it's still the general education and teaching.
That's really interesting. And maybe we can dive a little further into that in a bit. But I just wanted to ask you kind of specifically about some of the content that you did here. Who were the speakers? What were their messages? And you had shared that there were a couple of people that really stood out to you. Dr. Erica Schwartz. What was her presentation about, and what stood out to you?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, she is taking on more of a leadership role with A4M, and she did give a good presentation. And there were some good women there presenting. In fact, there was quite a few. But she talked about the equity in female hormone medicine, and expanded it on that we shouldn't wait for women to go into menopause. We should, when hormones are deficient, we should give women hormones. And talking about the future of female hormone medicine. But when I talk about the future of female hormone medicine, it's different than when she talks about it, because she prescribes low dose hormones. She prescribes first and second generation HRT systems. So she doesn't get the same results. The other presentation that I thought was just so spot on. In fact, I've attended so many of these medical conferences over the years, that I have to say, this presentation from Dr. Molly Maloof on love as medicine, relationships and how they can either heal or harm down to the cellular level. I've never seen a more brilliantly put together presentation in my life. She spoke for 45 minutes from beginning to end, I don't think with taking a breath, on just the science behind this. And it was packed. I can't wait to go through the slides again and revisit my notes. But it's interesting how doctors don't really look at things like love and meditation or relationships and how they impact hormones. And one of the elements in the Panacea protocol is in relationships. And the relationship somebody is in really impacts their level of stress, if they feel connected, if they feel loved, if they feel nurtured. And these things help calm the brain. And if a woman is in a very upsetting environment, it can create a lot of stress problems that will impact our ability to restore hormones or take a little longer. So it was interesting when she spoke about that.
I hadn't really considered it that way, that how, relationship might impact your ability to get your hormones balanced as well as they could be. You talk about that, of course, a lot, and we have even talked about that quite extensively, but it's really hitting me differently right now as I'm hearing you say that there was a presenter, a doctor, talking about the impact of relationships and love on our physical being.
I was really impressed. I'm going to read her books. I mean, I really want to dig deeper into the science of what she was talking about. But yeah, we had to incorporate relationships into the Panacea protocol because we found that when women lived in this toxic environment, we just had a difficult time. And if we took them out, or when we give women estrogen, it gives them the emotional strength and the stability to get out of that toxic relationship. So when I'm doing a consultation with the patient, one of the assessments I make is what their living situation is, because I know that's going to influence whether this patient's going to be successful or not. But I tell you, the thing that stood out to me the most, that I was so happy about, in fact, I walked away just pretty excited about this, is Dr. Callie Means, the senior director at the Department of Health and Human Services, spoke and gave a powerful speech on nutrition and the future of our healthcare and how it's connected and how the nutrition is one component to everybody getting healthy. He spoke about the changes that are coming to the FDA food pyramid, and it will be patient-centric instead of corporate-centric, financial-centric. And so basically, he said right now there's a lot of negotiating going on between what that food pyramid is going to be like and what school menus will look like. And that was exciting because, you and I have spoken about what's on these school menus and what the kids are eating, but they have to get the food pyramid done first. And so you've got some strong lobbyists with these major corporations that don't want this food pyramid change, because what they're going to do is completely remove the processed grains, off the bottom there. And so that's going to affect a lot of companies. So there's like a lot of money involved here, but he was talking about all the changes that are taking place. And he also commended the physicians in the auditorium. And I know that other speakers have, like Arnold Schwarzenegger spoke one year and just said to the doctors, you guys are the spearheaders here. And Callie Means was saying the same thing. You are the doctors that can make this movement better, quicker, more profound, because they're already on the cutting edge.
Yeah.
And so that's motivating for the physicians, knowing you are already ahead of the game. So he was commending the physicians who were there. But afterwards, I have to tell you, what I was most impressed with was how he interacted with the crowd after the fireside chat. And, when I went up to talk to him and shake his hand, he just made it a point to, look me in the eye, shake my hand with both hands. And I just said, thank you for what you're doing. And, and he says, thank you for what you're doing. And it was just, in the moment, it just felt like there was nobody else in the room. And I know that it wasn't just me. He was doing that with everybody. You can just tell he genuinely wanted to connect. And you just felt like you actually had a partner for the first time in healthcare, that this wasn't going to be such an uphill battle with getting healthy, that we have an administration that recognizes hormone therapy, that recognizes nutrition, that recognizes these things, that makes our job easier, and help, having that support instead of the battle, it just makes our job easier.
Well, and we've talked at length as well about, in terms of getting hormones balanced, what that means in terms of diet. And so many Americans have grown up on the traditional food pyramid, and so many doctors were the same people growing up with that food pyramid. And my understanding is that in general, they don't get much training, if any, on nutrition in medical school, or at least in the past haven't. So maybe that will change as well. But I can see why longevity doctors, again, kind of being on the leading edge of medicine and health, actual health, not just disease treatment, in terms of longevity, this would make sense for this message to be delivered to this audience.
As you know, the topic of this particular conference was longevity, and talking about expanding people's lifespan and enhancing their health through this lifespan is, I think, what is it, Hippocrates that was saying something like that. There's just, still some inconsistencies in the education. There's some old timers that are still there. I mean, but there's a lot that are gone, like Dr. David Perlmutter. I mean, he's been there for years since we've been going. And Dr. Felice Gerst, though she didn't speak at this conference, she had a book signing, but it was nice to see her. So we chatted it for a little bit. I tell you, one doctor that's been there, another old timer OG that looked absolutely incredible, was Terry Hertog. He's an anti-aging physician from Belgium who's been speaking there for years, and we never miss his lecture. I mean, we make sure that we're there first in the front row, because this doctor is a pioneer in the hormone medicine industry. So it was really nice to see him. And I couldn't believe how good he looked. Like, he just looked so good. And at this conference, what's interesting is it's an anti-aging conference. And so the clientele of people that go to these conferences spend money on anti-aging treatments. So you get a variety of people to the extent of which they'll put into their anti-aging appearance. But it's nice to be in that environment where, everybody is like-minded into health and longevity.
Yeah. And we've talked about that before too, that lifespan's great, living longer, but there's no, at least to me personally, there's no value in living longer if you don't also have the health span with it, of being healthy. And that's obviously what this whole conference is about, and everybody who attends is about. What have you seen evolve over time at this conference, having gone there for a couple of decades now?
Yeah, one thing about the A4M is there has been an evolution in general with what they're bringing on in terms of education and training, such as AI medicine and endocannabinoid medicine. And as things become popular and interesting, I know the A4M really wants to be the people to go to for this type of education and training. So they offer a wide variety of different types of anti-aging modalities. But I'd be really curious in the future here with the changes in the way our society is looking at health and nutrition. And it'll be interesting to see the other side of this transitional experience that A4M is going through. They're not going through anything officially, I'm not saying that, but just I can see that there are changes in leadership, which means that there'll be changes in direction. And because there were a few people up at the top when we were first starting out with A4M in the early 20s, where it was a very strict approach by Dr. Pamela Smith, actually was one of our first, where we first learned about hormone therapy. But she's very, very strict in first generation. She was barely even on board for second generation HRT. And she was one of the biggest voices that estrogen causes cancer, and very big with what the MeNoPause Society does. And so they kind of look to each other, get in for, I think the MeNoPause Society looks towards the leadership at A4M because they have similar protocols. But now that she's out and not, I didn't really see anybody talking about any sort of advanced HRT training available.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, estrogen in particular, but advanced female hormone balancing. You would think that longevity medicine would be onto this, but I'm hearing you say that at least historically they haven't been. how was female hormone balancing represented or presented this year, and how was that different from years past?
The thing is, female hormone medicine is not evolving as quickly as it should through the A4M. And I don't even know if it will. But what's interesting is, so the A4M is set up where there's a general session where you have this auditorium of lectures, and then there's other types of workshops in the afternoon. So there's a bunch of lectures in the auditorium. Afternoon, down in the conference halls, there's lecture halls, and a lot of them. And then you have your classes that you go from one lecture to the next, and you learn, approaches, whether it's a performance medicine or any different types of lectures. And those are for the general session. And I believe the goal for this type of session is to entice people to sign up for the actual education and training, to go through their courses and to become certified in anti-aging medicine through A4M. So it makes it's still confusing that when you go to one lecture and you hear what somebody is telling you, and they're so passionate about what they're talking about, whether they're talking about nitric oxide or weight loss or peptides or cycle syncing, whatever that is, it's like each one of these practitioners is very married to this thing that they're talking about, and they're paid speakers. It's not necessarily the viewpoints of A4M, but it's pretty close, because they don't want people stepping outside of that box. Like they don't let they wouldn't let Susie Wiley speak at the A4M conference, because her protocol is more advanced than the protocol that they're teaching there. So the big disappointing thing, and I wasn't expecting it to be any different, is the approach is low dose therapies. But it's very difficult to sit in these lectures and listen to these people talk about whatever it is they're promoting to manage symptoms. So, for example, one of the courses I went to, a doctor was talking about cycle syncing and how women need to alter their life around their menstrual cycle, and to do certain things in the follicular phase when estrogen is abundant and women feel good, and then the follicular phase to not require much out of yourself, and when the estrogen is low. But what's being, like with this doctor, what she miss is in this is, well, if you maintain estrogen always in the right range, there's no luteal phase depression or fatigue or lethargy or pelvic inflammation. So she's continuing to do the low dose protocol. So her patients have luteal phase problems with depression and they can't function. But she's very much into this cycle syncing. I mean, I don't think this doctor would ever be open up to the fact that, well, gosh, you don't even have to drop estrogen in the I mean, it's like when the reason women feel like hell in the luteal phase is because they don't have estrogen. Give this woman estrogen so she's not crashing so much in the luteal phase. And then we wouldn't have this conversation. She wouldn't be speaking there, because it's whatever she's promoting wouldn't exist. Same thing with the doctor that was talking about nitric oxide and the products he uses to boost nitric oxide, when he does low dose hormones that low dose estrogen that influences a woman's nitric oxide levels. And so that's why, when I'm sitting in here and I'm looking, it's like, okay, everybody's talking about all these wonderful things to help women's symptoms or help symptoms, but yet these are still the people that are underdosing patients, so they still have these symptoms.
That's interesting, because we've talked at length on this podcast in many different episodes about, the pharmaceutical industry and the model of selling more drugs and supplements to address the symptoms. And now I'm hearing you say that it's kind of the same thing. It's just a little more fancy or interesting or leading edge types of treatments, peptides, things like that. But they're still missing the main point.
They are. And I'll tell you something, peptides was really big there. And it is and that's the future. But peptides are big because there is a lot of money to be made. And there is this this strange thing going on where in alternative medicine mindset practitioners getting away from conventional medicine, they think that they're, kind of thumbing their noses at the establishment. But in reality, they're just doing something similar. It's just managing symptoms of hormone deficiency, all under the guise of this is good for you. It's healthy. It's natural. It's, alternative. It's not conventional. And the pharmaceutical company isn't making the money. Well, the compounding pharmacies are, and the doctors are, by selling their products and supplements to manage the symptoms. And so that was part of my frustration I believe I mentioned it on the show before, is when I was sitting in a peptide lecture and they're talking about, oh, well, you prescribe this peptide to manage these symptoms in your patients. And I'm raising my hand and I'm like, so are these women already on hormone therapy? Well, yeah, they're on hormone therapy, but when the hormone therapy stops working or they need it, they can take this. And it's like, and at that moment, it's like, why not just give her more estrogen, give her more hormones? But this is where they stop here, because then, as you know, they can't sell, they won't sell as many peptides.
It feels like we keep going around in a circle here, in that there is an answer to this. What is stopping? So in the past, what was stopping physicians was estrogen causes cancer, this fear, the WHI study. Well, that has been debunked. The black box label has been removed. So what is now stopping this industry from advancing, do you think?
I tell you, that black box warning thing, I was surprised how little that was brought up.
I'm surprised that wasn't like one of the leading things, but I haven't heard you say anything.
There was a couple people that mentioned it, but it wasn't anything leading. It said, that's why I'm saying this conference, there was some things missing here. There wasn't this level of excitement that I would normally get when you go there. Especially in the beginning, it was just, the energy was good because the doctors really felt like they were on part of a movement of getting healthy in an alternative way and stepping away from conventional medicine. And it's turning into not being that way. It's really evolved, I think, because of all the products, all the things, like when you go to the exhibit halls, all the products, all the things that they're selling, there's so much money to be made by keeping women hormonally deficient. And I don't think the A4M will ever be open to offering advanced HRT protocols. And especially this whole removing the black box warning, and they didn't really talk about it, because if you talk about it, you bring that up, there's a conversation that needs to be had after that. But I don't think that doctors are qualified to have that conversation. It's like, what they should be asking is, okay, now if we know estrogen doesn't cause cancer, why are we keeping estrogen so low now? Because that was the reason. And when doctors talking about keeping estrogen at levels between 100 and 150, it's like, are you kidding me? And one of my colleagues mentioned, he said, if the A4M cannot change their stance on this, because they'd have to admit that the last 20 or 30 something years that they've been in business, has not been right. But then again, they can approach it like we have new advancements, but it's actually not new advancements. I mean, this type, advanced third and fourth generation HRT protocols have been around for a couple generations. And I don't think they're going to advance, because a lot of what anti-aging medicine is selling patients treatments, products, supplements, and other things to manage symptoms. So here we are again. So it's like, I was
going to say, here, deja vu all over again.
This is why it's so important for women to understand what they need. They have to educate themselves about estrogen. They have to understand how much estrogen their brains and bodies require. Because if they do that, they'll know what kind of physician to look for, because it's really finding the right HRT physician is very difficult, because all doctors and a lot of the doctors that we're talking using language like optimizing hormones. You got to optimize your patient's hormones. Okay, well, what does optimize mean? Well, when your patient feels better. For how long? I mean, there's just this vague, uh, the whole balancing hormones and optimization. So it is very confusing for women. So if women can understand what they need with estrogen, they'll be able to find a doctor that says, we're about full restoration. We're not about giving you minuscule doses of estrogen and then managing your symptoms with products. That is a business model. And you know that I talk about that. And I think women need to be aware that just because somebody sounds like they're going to balance your hormones doesn't mean it's going to happen. You know, I was just thinking as I'm talking there's a lot of doctor influencers. See, the A4M really is one of the place to go to be seen as an anti-aging physician. Well, it used to be anyway. All the top anti-aging physicians would go, and it would be like a who's who, but it's not quite like that. In fact, I was shocked at how many doctors weren't there, celebrity doctors, influencer doctors. I mean, there was no Heather Hirsch, there was no Casperson, there was no Haver, there was, it's like, where are these experts in menopause medicine, hormone medicine? I mean, this is where you go. This is the cutting edge education. But they weren't there either. So I found that pretty curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in many of our episodes, when you've been talking about the evolution of how you really came to the fourth generation HRT. And once again, I'll remind listeners to go back to episode 6 to hear about the 4 generations. It's particular in that episode, but almost every episode you talk about when you were looking for answers and you would go to these conferences and you'd raise your hand and, try and ask a question and you'd be sort of poo-pooed. What I'm hearing is that it's a little bit of the same thing still.
That part has not changed. I mean, the part that's changed is they're bringing on psychedelic medicine. They're talking about stuff like that. But what hasn't changed is the evolution of female hormone restoration. Because a lot of this, I mean, I was in the exhibit hall and I had gone through and I'm standing back and looking down the rows and rows of all this stuff and looking at all the different products that everybody's trying to sell. And it's mostly compounding pharmacies. So the pharmacy industry is still involved, but now we're talking more compounding pharmacies involved. And I'm thinking, how little this exhibit hall would have been if we fully restored women's hormones. The products that they're selling are really designed to manage the symptoms of not just women's deficient hormones, but men's. And men too are being underdosed. And this is why it's so important for people to understand how much estrogen do you need and where can I find a doctor who's trained on the technique and the process of full restoration.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, that makes this podcast ever more important because this information still is not getting out. And as you and I have talked about before, the one danger or concern is as more of a spotlight is put on female hormone balancing and taking off the black box warning of estrogen, it's splashy, that there's going to become more regulation or that standard of care being taught that is still going to be less than.
Under the guise of it's good for us, under this,
well, right.
We're listening to you. We're listening to you. We hear you.
Yeah. So, I mean, women just need to stay vigilant and stay informed and be their own advocates.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's just hard for women. They don't know who to go to for help. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges is because everybody's using that language of hormone optimization, hormone expert, balance your hormones. This language. Women are like, well, I think I'm going to, like you thought you were going to the right person. You thought you were on the right hormone therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And
and it's still interesting because, a few people who do know that I'm on now more of an advanced hormone therapeutic dose sometimes kind of roll their eyes at me when they say, well, I'm on hormones too, but not like you are. Yet as if, again, like I'm juicing or something, it's sort of said as they're casting dispersion on what
it's
I'm
like,
doing.
why would somebody have a negative response when you tell them you're on an advanced protocol? I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah, it is like, well, because I'll tell you something, you can tell that they haven't had the juice of life high enough to feel it, because anytime a woman experiences like you, I mean, Maggie, if somebody told you you couldn't feel good if your estrogen levels got up, I mean, what would you say? I mean, it's like you have no idea. It's like you stop telling people because they have no idea how good it feels. And there's no way that you can explain it to them how good it feels without sounding like a used car salesman.
It's really true.
It
And
is.
again, I've kind of stopped talking about it with most people for that reason. And if they want to know about it, they know that I work in this industry with you, and that I'm working with the top person doing this type of work. So if they want to know, they can ask. But I'm not evangelizing
It's almost
amongst
like a
people I
secret.
know.
Yeah, I've been trying to talk about this and people, it's very dismissive. It's like the answer to what every woman is looking for, but they're just this, they cannot, it's almost like it's too good to be true.
I was just going to say, I think
It
that there
is.
is some belief or feeling or whatever that it's too good to be true,
Too good to be true.
or again, that there's some kind of illegal juicing going on here, like weightlifters do with
Oh,
steroids or
yeah, I've been
whatever.
called a charlatan, snake oil salesman, gimmicky. It's like, oh, you have no idea. It's like, how do you explain this? And that's why I wanted to do the podcast. How do you explain what life is like with estrogen? Because I really believe, Maggie, that women, the majority of women, have never lived a day with healthy estrogen, especially the ones that go on birth control pills and antidepressants at such a young age and stay on them for years. So their ovaries are suppressed. So they don't have the birth control pill is not estrogen. It's an estrogen like chemical. So women don't get the benefits of estrogen from the pill. They actually, it reduces their estrogen. So they're estrogen deficient and it keeps their FSH low. So the body doesn't produce estrogen. So women are in this state of chemical menopause for a long time.
Mm.
And so they don't realize. So these young women just don't know what life is like, being a woman, being a girl, being a natural woman. Women talk about wanting to be natural. There is nothing more natural than plenty of estrogen for a woman to just feel in her natural prime. It's so weird. I have been on these hormones for a long time, and I know it sounds like I just started them, but I cannot imagine my life without them. And so I do think that there will be a group of women who will learn that they're being underdosed, and that group will get larger and larger over time in this evolution, I believe. And then the demand for education, and that's what's great about what we offer with advanced HRT education. So if you're a physician out there wanting to learn the technique and process for full female hormone restoration, panaceasciences.com is where you start. So I tell you, we're getting so many inquiries now on this type of HRT. So I'm pretty excited about that. And it's great for women because they have a place to go to. It's not going to be that difficult to find a doctor who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, that's exciting. So just back to the conference, tell me, what were some of the cool things you did see in that exhibit hall? Like, what were some of the products or things that are coming? Maybe now we're departing a little bit from female hormone balancing, but just peptides or other things that you may have experienced or seen or heard about that got you jazzed.
I am a fan of peptides. Peptides do have their place. And I think I'd like to see the cost of those come down, because I think more people should have access to peptides, but secondary to the foundational restoration of the main sex hormones. But there's some good peptides, and it's so exciting because there's thousands of peptides and they do different things. And that was exciting. There were a lot of supplement lines, the supplement for everything. Yes.
And I would say that, it's not that we're anti-supplement, because I certainly take plenty to augment and complement the hormone therapy. But again, it's not for symptom management, and it's certainly not first line. It's an enhancement to everything else working optimally.
Yeah, it is a part. It's a part of it's not the protocol. It's just a part of the protocol. And that's probably the difference with what A4M, it's more like, low dose hormones. And then the real protocol comes in the supplementation of managing symptoms through supplements and treatments. But yeah, there's treatments for just about, there's few cosmeceutical companies there. That's always nice to have a nice medical grade facial line. There's a lot of red light therapy, hyperbolic chambers. There was more there than I've ever seen. And portable ones. So it was interesting to see the portable hyperbaric chambers. The cost of those is coming down, and people are buying those now for home use. But there's so many other things too, that there's so many things that you don't know if it works or not. You're just hoping it does because you can't see. Like when you do something to help build your mitochondria, I can't tell if my mitochondria, maybe it's the way how I feel, but nothing has made me feel as good as estrogen has made me feel, healthy mitochondria or not. So there's really no more powerful thing for a woman's health than estrogen, and that's everything else should just be secondary. But like I said, most things aren't needed. What was big is diagnostics. That's really the future here. They actually talked about that quite a bit, is diagnostics, testing, a lot of tests, but because there's so much money in it. There's so much money in diagnostic testing, but we try to keep that to a minimum because you can absolutely go crazy. The doctors get excited because that's a revenue generating technique for them. But boy, when it comes to the patient, I mean, how we roll. It's like we want to do the minimum amount of things that's the most impactful, because you're doing this the rest of your life. I mean, not only that, you want to do the things that are going to make the biggest impact. And the number one thing that gives women the biggest impact than anything else, hands down, is plenty of estrogen.
If there's one parting thought you would leave women with, what would that be?
I'll tell you, after attending A4M yet again, one thing is crystal clear. The future of longevity medicine will be built on symptom management, fear-based dosing, or pretending hormones are balanced. Women do not need to be managed through midlife. They need to be fully restored. Until anti-aging medicine is willing to confront estrogen deficiency head-on and train clinicians on how to fully restore estrogen, women will continue to suffer unnecessarily. And that's exactly why this conversation is important, and this work must continue. If this episode resonated with you, it's likely your hormones are not dosed correctly, or you need to start HRT. Advanced hormone balancing is about full restoration, not symptom suppression. To see if this approach is good for you, book a complimentary discovery session at advancedhormonebalancing.com. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, everybody benefits when your hormones are balanced. I'm Marie Hoäg, and this is the MeNoPause Moxie Podcast.